I went to a KISS concert not too long ago, and it was an amazing experience. It was big, it was flashy, it was loud, and it was fun.
It's the greatest rock and roll show that's ever been presented. I mean, they started it all with the explosions and the over-the-top performances.
They really love what they're doing up there.
It's fun.
They love it.
Something about the imagery of these characters, the name KISS, and the music, it's something about it that just all fit.
Come on! They went further than anybody else would ever dare go.
That's what KISS is about. Don't contain me in a box, because we'll explode.
We wanted to be the band we never saw.
We broke the mold of what bands were supposed to do, how you're supposed to act.
I wanted to be Elvis through a Marshall on steroids.
We believed in the essence and the spirit of rock and roll, which is there are no rules.
Leave their ears ringing, leave them sweating, leave their mouths open.
It's pretty hard to fake what we're doing. We're up there, we're doing it because we're having fun, and we're doing it for the fans. That's the reason I think we've lasted this long.
You wanted the best, you got the best.
After 3 decades in the spotlight, KISS is still the hottest band in the world. With 80 million albums sold, they have more gold records than any other American band in history. They've survived reinventions, revolving members, and even death to become one of the best-loved and most successful rock bands ever.
This was a phenomenon that nobody else has been able to capture.
I was amazed at the kind of people that were in the audience.
These people have been fans for 25 years.
There were those who weren't even around or born when they started, but loving every minute of it.
They absolutely are the best fans in the world.
KISS has always been about giving you bang for the buck.
This band knows how to take care of their fans.
Nobody wants to go to the grocery store, pay a lot of money, and get an empty sack.
You've got to put on a show. You've got to give the audience what they came to see.
Nobody should go to a rock and roll concert, pay a lot of money, and get an empty stage.
KISS isn't just music. KISS isn't just a stage show. It isn't just makeup. It isn't just merchandise.
It just reminds generation after generation, this is an act that's fun and the music is great.
Something about the dynamic between Paul and myself has worked for almost 30 years. Whatever that dynamic is, it's worked very well.
New York, 1970. Aspiring musician and college student Gene Klein meets 17-year-old fellow New Yorker Stanley Eisen. Soon to be known to the world as Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, their partnership would become one of the longest-running and most prolific collaborations in modern music.
When I first met Gene, we were over at a guitar player's house that both of us were playing with in separate bands, a guy named Steve Carnell.
I had played with Gene throughout my teenage years, and I had just recently, at that point, played with Paul. And Gene felt we needed to get another guy in there, and I knew just the guy to do it.
So I walked in, and Gene was there. Steve said to him, "Hey, this is my friend Stan," at that point, you know, and he plays music too. And Gene sat there and went, "Oh yeah, play something for me."
Well, Paul played a very good song. I could tell by the look on Gene's face he was a little bit surprised, but he didn't say much. He just said, it was good.
He thought I was sort of cocky, full of myself. All of it is true, of course. And thought that I was a very sort of disagreeable character.
Ultimately, I think what brought us together was a certain work ethic and the belief that if you work hard, you will succeed. We were very hardworking and very dedicated to trying to make it.
We got together and we formed a band and we started to play.
Wicked Lester was the first band that Gene and I were in together.
We were looking for gigs everywhere. We were trying to get ourselves hooked up into a situation where we could play somewhere and make a name for ourselves.
We got a record deal at one point with Epic Records.
We were on cloud nine. I mean, we were all of a sudden in a recording studio, something we'd always dreamed about.
Spent a year toiling over an album that was just a hodgepodge of every style imaginable.
But it wasn't satisfying. The end of the rainbow didn't have the pot of gold.
Gene and I had a vision and a direction we wanted to go in, and unfortunately, the other guys didn't really see things our way.
So for various reasons, they asked me if it would be okay if they split from me because they wanted to do something that I really didn't want to do.
We decided to break up the band. We decided to walk out of our record contract with Epic Records. And in hindsight, we did the right thing. But at the time we were doing it, you would say we were probably certifiable, we decided to go right back to scratch and start all over again.
Gene and I decided to transform Wicked Lester into this hard rock monster that became Kiss. We started looking for musicians to play with. And lo and behold, in the back of Rolling Stone magazine, there was an ad that said, basically, drummer willing to do anything. And we said, that sounds like our boy.
I picked up the phone and just pretty much said it. We are putting together a band. We have big dreams, big ideas. I saw your ad in Rolling Stone. Do you mind answering some questions?
Would you wear makeup? Would you do this? Would you do that? What do you look like? How do you dress?
We're going to drop all the safety guards, and we're going to go for it because we want to be that special band that everybody's going to say, those guys, they took it all the way. Even if it means wearing a dress on stage, we're really going to go there.
All I wanted to do was play. That's all I ever wanted to do was play for anybody, anyone, anywhere, anybody to listen to me.
We immediately said, let's try this guy out. And when Peter started rehearsing with us, something about the feeling of it fit. It just felt as if we'd been playing all along.
We reached a point where we knew it was really time to add a lead guitar player. And at that point, we put an ad into the Village Voice. The ad ran, and we tried out probably about 50 guitar players. Every shape, form you can imagine. Some could barely play, some could barely speak English. So a guy sauntered into the room, almost tripping over his feet, with one red sneaker and one orange sneaker, and proceeded to plug in.
I pulled out my guitar and I was rehearsing a little to warm up my fingers, and Gene came over and said, we're going to play a song for you, listen to it, and then jump up on stage with us. And I just went to every solo I ever knew and just jabbed my ass off.
From the time we first got together, the four of us played in a room together. What we were doing was undeniable. We knew that we would take over the world. The Kiss image really was born out of our philosophy that a band should be more than just a bunch of guys who look like they just rolled out of bed, who got on stage and are going to jam for an hour. We wanted to look like the band we never saw, sound like the band we never heard. We wanted to be the ultimate combination of all the things we loved.
We knew we wanted to wear makeup for a bizarre notion, but we always envisioned ourselves in playing to huge audiences.
Music was changing rapidly at the time. You know, the New York Dolls and Alice Cooper, that whole New York scene that we were part of. You know, we emulated Alice in ways. He was a big inspiration to us. And we just took it a step further.
When we were experimenting with makeup, we went through all kinds of permutations. And at one point, it was a lot more femme than it turned out ultimately. And one of the problems with that was we looked like a bunch of linebackers at a keg party. You know, it didn't look like rock and roll. We had to find something that truly was ours. The idea of us being a second-rate Dolls was not what we wanted. We wanted to be a first-rate Kiss.
At the end of the day, we decided that everybody in the band should be his own personality, his own star. I've always had a fascination with science fiction, horror, and, you know, sort of the dark side of life in general. And so what came out is a kind of a cross between, perhaps, Lon Chaney Sr.'s Phantom of the Opera. Clearly my boots are Godzilla.
So one day he invited me to see them playing, and he put Sandy makeup. I didn't recognize my son. I didn't know which one is Gene. Honestly.
I used to love drawing stars, you know, stars in the constellations, but also the whole star system, where the stars of the 40s were bigger than life, where you only saw them at their best. That's really what I wanted to be, was the epitome and ultimate kind of rock and roll star.
When people ask me which one is your son, I always say the good-looking one.
Well, I was always fascinated with science fiction, and so I figured, you know, I'd be a spaceman. Since, you know, I'm not of this earth anyway. I'm from Jindal.
And Peter Criss his preoccupation with cats and all the rest of that, he should have been dead many times over. He's had so many accidents. If he doesn't have 9 lives, I don't know who does.
Something happens. It's like when we get on stage, the makeup and the persona of the characters that we've all invented kind of like take over. And I forget about who I really am and my true identity, but it works. At least with Kiss.
June 1973. Having developed their trademark image, Kiss begins to concentrate all their efforts on their music, rehearsing and plotting ways to get into the studio.
When we were rehearsing on 23rd Street and 5th Avenue, 10 East 23rd Street, we needed money at least to pay rent, and scrounged and did what we could.
Walls are covered with egg crates. Some of them have still broken eggs. This is in downtown New York. The Roaches loved this place.
I drove a cab. There was actually a cab stand almost right in front of 10 East 23rd Street. And I would take a break, park the cab, rehearse, and then get back in the cab and finish my run. Wicked Lester was owed money by Ron Johnson, who worked through Electric Lady Studios. He was our producer at the time. And since he couldn't pay us, Gene and I made a deal with him that if he could get Eddie Kramer, the famous engineer, producer who worked with Hendrix and Zeppelin and who also worked at Electric Lady, to do our demo, we would forego the money.
I said, okay, if we're going to record this demo, we're going to do it like the way we used to do it in England, 4-track demo, no multi-track recording. And I remember very clearly when the door opened to the studio and in walks this skinny thing, was Ace Frehley. I mean, he was so skinny, I mean, if you turned him sideways, you wouldn't even see him.
When I met Eddie, I thought Eddie was God because he had worked with the Beatles, you know, Jimi Hendrix especially, and you know, a lot of huge people.
Ace and Peter were like, they were really, really nervous. But the session went very well, and I think we cut like maybe 6 songs, Black Diamond, all the core songs for Kiss.
Eddie seemed to have a good grasp on what we wanted to project sound-wise, and he was able to transfer it to a tape. It worked.
And the tape was just another step in that onslaught that would lead to worldwide domination.
July 13th, 1973. After months of preparation, Kiss decides to unveil their new image. In hopes of getting a record contract, they produce a showcase for members of New York's recording industry.
I put together the press kit and mailed out hundreds to record companies and so on. And then we decided to take over the Diplomat Hotel, which was, for all intents and purposes, a whorehouse, but it was centrally located on 6th Avenue and 42nd Street. One of the guys that came over was a television music producer. His name was Bill Aucoin.
So we're going into this hotel, and the elevator isn't working, so we have to walk up to the ballroom, and we had to step over some holes in the floor, sit in the front row, and Kiss comes on. Well, it's certainly different.
You got nothing to lose.
Bill Aucoin was really the first to be interested in Kiss. It really was kind of the motivating factor to go down and see them and get involved. He was very excited about them. Came back with the tape, we listened to the tape, and we thought, oh, the music is great. This is perfect.
Bill gave us a number and a card, and I think a day or two later we called him and went down to see him. And he said to us, if I can't get you a deal in 2 weeks, you guys can walk. And if you're not interested in being the biggest band around, then you should leave now.
We brought it to Neil Bogart just as he was starting Casablanca Records, who loved it for the music, had not seen them. When he said, you know, I think I'm going to sign this. This is going to be my first group on Casablanca.
Neil was all for it until he saw it.
And after he saw us with makeup, he said, I don't buy the makeup thing. I'll sign you, but the makeup's got to go. We either foolishly or brilliantly told him and said, our way or the highway.
Even to the day that we shot the album cover, he called up and he goes, you sure you want to wear that makeup? Because if you don't, you know, we can still
2 shots without it.
We would be Kiss, or we would be nothing.
And then you let me know.
I had a musical genius friend, a fellow named Neil Bogart, who said to me, I got this group. They're all made up in makeup. And I said, wow. He said, but they're great. You got to see them. He called them to my attention, and I knew he was onto something. It was really something.
I grew up in New York watching American Bandstand every day religiously. So when we found ourselves invited to be on In Concert as our first major television appearance, it was an incredible honor.
And right before we went on, I met Dick Clark, you know, and Dick Clark to me is God, you know. And he shook everybody's hand and said, good luck, guys. And it's like, I go, wow, I just met Dick Clark, now I got to do a TV show.
I had a feeling that the success was there because there was so much showmanship involved. It was a show. In those days, a lot of guys got up, they played guitar, they sang, they looked bored. You didn't get your money's worth. When you saw Kiss, you got more than your money's worth.
Neil Bogart had also orchestrated something called the Big Kiss-Off, a kissing contest that could attract the Guinness Book of Records and find out who's going to kiss the longest.
They were really not happy about this kissing contest. They thought, what does this kissing contest have to do with us?
I remember in Detroit walking into a record store where the Kissing Marathon was going on, thinking we were the stars of the show, and 2 people were kissing. One looked at the other and then looked up at me and went, who are you?
Welcome to the Mike Douglas Show.
You know, anytime you have a strong promotion out there that gets national attention, it works for the talk shows.
This is their latest album, which I'm going to show the camera right here.
Going on the Mike Douglas Show was one of those events where you go, what are we doing here?
And of course, everybody thinks we look like Men from Mars.
But before we see them perform, I want you to meet one of the members of this act close up.
Bill Aucoin comes and says, okay, which one of you guys is going to go out there and talk with Mike Douglas? And everybody's going, I said, I will.
And you remember sitting in the green room and watching Gene come out. And Toady Fields was there. Funny statement she made, something like...
It'd be funny if under this he was just a nice Jewish boy.
You should only know.
I do, you can't hide the hook.
So here they are, playing Firehouse. Here is Kiss.
Get the fire!
When you first see them, it's the greatest visual trip. And I think they blew away most bands because their stage act was outrageous.
From the time we started off in New York City, our belief was always that we can love other bands, but all's fair in love and rock and roll. And when we hit the stage, our purpose and our mission is to destroy any other band that these people have heard before us or will hear after us.
You can imagine in the 70s looking at a band with makeup on, with, 6-inch heels. It's like, it's intimidating.
February 5th, 1974. Kiss performs their first tour dates outside the New York area. While working as an opening act for established bands provides both experience and exposure, it's not long before problems begin to arise.
No one wanted them as an opening band. You couldn't follow them.
We used to have fights with Blue Oyster Cult and Black Sabbath, and they just couldn't believe it. What is this act that's opening up for us, this makeup rock and roll band? And I think every major act that was headlining thought we would destroy their reputation.
We couldn't stay on tour. We couldn't get a tour, we'd immediately go in and do another record.
Kiss, the demons of rock, burning cross-country with fire and thunder. Kiss, with a new album that's all rock and roll!
Hotter Than Hell was not a success. I mean, that was a disappointment. They had put so much into the first album, and then they had toured. They didn't have very much time to prepare for the second album. And then came Dressed to Kill.
Since, of course, we didn't own any suits, not that we would want to wear them if we could afford them, we borrowed suits from Bill Aucoin.
I went and got suits out of my closet and just said, okay, this is going to be the cover. It's unique enough with the makeup.
March 19th, 1975. Dressed to Kill becomes the third Kiss album released in just over a year. Like its predecessors, it fails to sell up to expectations. The exorbitant costs of their stage show drive both the band and Casablanca Records to the verge of bankruptcy.
We basically decided that we would stay out on the road and just keep bringing our message to the people.
We were having trouble with the record company, with Casablanca. They couldn't quite pay us, so we were in a very tumultuous time financially. I remember doing an interview at the time, and somebody said, so how does it feel to be rich and famous? And I said, I can tell you what it feels like to be famous.
Their manager, Bill Aucoin, had used his American Express credit card to push the band for the first, 18 months, 2 years of their career.
I had never put more than about $100 on my American Express card, and $100 was a lot. And I'll never forget getting a call from American Express and said, Mr. Aucoin, you've spent $25,000 this month. Do you expect to pay it? And of course I said, absolutely, no question about it, I'm gonna pay it, knowing there wasn't a chance.
People would come to see us in droves, and when people would tell us about their feelings about the albums, they'd always say, doesn't really sound like you guys. I think the problem with the first three Kiss albums was that they didn't capture what Kiss basically was and is, and that's a live experience.
We knew we really couldn't afford to do another album again. We really knew that if we could capture the live performance somehow, it could be a good album. Plus, it's a lot cheaper than being in the studio for a couple of months.
Somebody decided to not only record a live record, but to make it a double live record, which for the record industry was death, because they were perceived as cheap records.
When I got the phone call, it was from Neil Bogart. He said, Eddie, you know, Kiss, they're ready to do a live album. Do you want to do it? And I said, this was going to be a hell of a challenge. Because basically, when they get on stage and they play, it's take no prisoners.
May 16th, 1975. Even with the mediocre sales of their albums, fans still flock to see Kiss in concert. And what may be their last chance, the band takes the stage for the first of 3 nights to be recorded for their upcoming live album.
They performed in Detroit years ago, and I think it was a place, the arena was called Cobo Hall.
Yes.
I could then see that
we took a taxi from the airport, and we passed Cobo Hall, and I saw people standing around the block.
So I saw
online. I said,
I don't know how many years ago.
Is that for Kiss? Yeah. You know, I couldn't believe it.
We went up on stage and pretty much commandeered it. We took the audience our prisoners, and we left them deaf, dumbfounded, and in disbelief.
Then I saw what was looming ahead of them.
I remember after we recorded Kiss Alive, saying to Bill, do you think we might sell 350,000 copies? And he looked at me and said, that would be nice.
Casablanca Records was on its last legs. It was over. They ran out of money.
Bill Aucoin had holes in his shoes, holes in his sweaters that were held together with Scotch tape.
We were all broke. Paul came in one winter's day to ask me to borrow $5.
I looked at him and I saw all the holes in his clothes, and I didn't even bother asking him.
He didn't ask me for the $5 and made some excuse and left.
We thought, all right, The record's coming out, we'll sell maybe 250,000, and they start selling 300, 400,000. It went gold, and we went, wow. 500,000 units?
1 million, and then 2, and then 3.
That's incredible.
They couldn't keep Alive in stock.
There was a feeling in the industry that live albums didn't really sell. They didn't realize that Kiss fans were fanatical, and also that they loved the live show.
I think it started a mini revolution. Everybody wants to go and record live.
Alive, the sound, became synonymous with double live albums. After Alive came out, we became the biggest band in the country.
It would be silly for a hard rock band like us to come out on stage and play on stools. So obviously, yeah, we go for the throat.
They're different from other bands, and they give you some more to expect.
I like Kiss because they got a hard driving rock beat.
Kiss, the rock group. They call themselves the Kiss family. They make a lot of money doing this because their fans adore them. They emulate them. They buy their records, their t-shirts, even flashlights. They are a hard-driving, pyrotechnical, even demonic-appearing group.
We make sure that when we get up on stage, the music has got a lot of punch and power, because that's what our music is all about.
What a way to make a living.
November 21st, 1975. While Kiss's double album Alive flies off shelves all over the country, the band begins to build a huge fan base from coast to coast.
Something was going on that we hadn't planned on, the way fans looked at Kiss. Yes, they were songs they liked, but they wanted to take the message in the street and ram it in people's faces. The Kiss Army started as a natural progression from that. In Indiana, of all places, there was a guy named Bill Starkey. He had called a local radio station and demanded they play Kiss because they only played la-di-da kind of music. They refused. And he threatened them, if you don't play Kiss, I'm going to surround your radio station with the Kiss Army.
And the radio station thought it was a joke. And lo and behold, the place was surrounded by thousands of people demanding to hear Kiss. And that was the start of the Kiss Army.
Something definitely was going on between the fans and the band. A kind of, you are us, we are you. Without you, we're nothing.
A perfect case was Cadillac, Michigan, where we got a letter from a coach from the high school football team.
The coach of that team decided that he would use Kiss songs to inspire the football players, and he would make each one of them get dressed in Kiss makeup. So in essence, they'd get on the field in war paint.
The football team had been in last place and then started playing Kiss music in the locker room before their games, and were now the champs. And they asked whether or not we would come to the town to celebrate.
We thought the least we could do is to show up and say, you know, this is cool. When we went there, it was like a scene out of the Twilight Zone.
The mayor and all the other political bigwigs wore Kiss makeup.
They named the main street of the town Kiss Boulevard. I mean, it was nuts.
You know, we got into a helicopter, and the doors to the helicopter didn't close.
I remember how cold and windy it was, but we can't wear jackets over this stuff.
It was a great day, and something that is really the core of what makes us different than other bands.
pressures are greater. They're locked in a bubble, imprisoned from fans by their own fantasies. When they arrive for a concert, they're immediately besieged by the media and surrounded by tight security, while their near-hysterical fans wait in readiness for the ultimate rock fantasy to begin.
I think it's a lot more thrilling to know that there's a real Superman than to see something that's put together for movies. We're flesh and blood. I think we represent an expression of your fantasies.
People actually started, the fans, writing letters saying and believing that we wore this makeup at all times. I started getting phone calls in my hotel room. Do you have the makeup on right now? Are you wearing the dragon boots? 24 hours a day. We realized that, and so out of respect to what the fans wanted, we started to hide our identities. And it was tough. We became trapped in the makeup. I really had to hide my gorgeous face for years because I was so stunning.
KISS members spend about an hour on their costumes and on their makeup. Few people have ever seen them without it. It's their mystique.
We like to keep a little bit of privacy. Plus, I think that most of our fans want us to keep this mystique. I mean, we can't walk down the street like this all the time, so when we don't look like this, we'd rather not be seen.
We're trying to keep a mystique about, what we are. Nobody wants to see Frankenstein with his makeup off.
The hardest part, I think, was when we'd all go out together. We would have to take the napkins from the restaurant, and we would come out in a group, and everybody would have these kind of white kerchiefs on, and the paparazzi couldn't figure out who it was.
Excuse me, are you Gene? Are you Gene? Excuse me, are you Gene Simmons? You're not Gene Simmons, are you? No, I'm the bodyguard. Oh, my God.
January 1976. Almost overnight, KISS has become a household name. But sudden stardom only makes the pressure to continue their success that much greater.
The challenge with Destroyer was that after doing an album like Alive that was so huge, most people would expect us to fall on our faces and slide into obscurity.
While KISS was the preeminent live attraction, we didn't know how to be who we were in the studio.
So at that point, Bob Ezrin was the one who came to the forefront.
He was an accomplished studio producer.
He was doing all this great stuff with Alice Cooper.
He came to see us because a 15-year-old kid in Canada came up to him and said,
"There's this really cool band, dude, and you should be their producer," and they're called like KISS, man.
So Bob Ezrin came to see us live.
And I watched 13,000 people get up on their feet and stay on their feet for 3 hours, solid. I just saw this band destroy the crowd, and I knew immediately that this was an important force, and I wanted to work with them.
Bob very much was a disciplinarian.
It was kind of like being a camp counselor. These guys were young and they were filled with energy, and they certainly weren't lacking in any ego. So trying to rein them in and get them to do what I wanted them to do was not easy at first.
But it was what we needed because we were very green.
And what I did was I introduced the whistle to the session. I brought in the camp whistle, and I blew that whistle the first time. These guys just about jumped out of their clothes because it was so loud. And I went, "Campers, we're going to work."
Some of Ace's personal problems, either liquid or chemical, really started to affect his performance within the band. And as early as Destroyer in 1976, he was absent a lot.
Ace is a unique individual, completely visceral, wanted to really enjoy himself, was really having fun being a rock star. And there were a couple of times where in the sessions either he would come late or once or twice where he just didn't come at all. And I guess our frustration kind of built up, and at one point we needed a guitar part, and we needed it right now. We were just about ready to finish the song, and he wasn't there.
Bob said, "Then we're going to bring somebody else in because we have a schedule and we have work that has to get done."
The only thing that bothered me was I didn't find out until after the record was out, which I thought was rude. I go, "Wait a minute, I'm listening to the record." I'm going, "I didn't play that."
It was a hard lesson to learn, but a good lesson to learn. And that was really that the sum is much more important than the parts.
I'm the king of the nighttime world, and you're my headline queen. I'm the king of the nighttime world. Come, live your secret dream.
So we made this record, and we did a lot of things that KISS had never done before. The whole process was exciting, and we all felt we had something really, really special. Then, the album comes up, And the hardcore Kiss fans speak first. And they absolutely hated it.
I just think they had to get acquainted. It's not unusual, and fans have to either get used to it or you finally have to break a song on radio. So, we had to wait, and obviously when Beth hit, then it went mainstream.
Come on, Margaret, I've always wanted to meet Kiss. Yeah, that's what I've always wanted. 4 kisses on the first date. I wish Kiss would do one more song for us.
Beth, I hear you calling, but I can't come home right now.
Who'd have thunk it? That was going to be the first of a number of singles that broke out of the album.
It didn't have any guitars, didn't have any drums, nobody was screaming. It was about a girl.
We threw it on the flip side of Detroit Rock City, which we thought would be our single. We never expected it to get any airplay or anybody to really hear it.
Radio immediately turned it around and started playing Beth, which became the biggest song of the year.
What can I do? What can I do?
And the winner is, congratulations, Beth!
The thing that made Beth the hit that it was the juxtaposition of pure pop sensibility with this kind of rock and roll lyric, sung by a guy with makeup on. I mean, it was just weird enough, and yet not too weird, to catch people's attention. And, and it was a really good song.
'Cause me and the boys will be playing all night.
November 1st, 1976, Kiss releases Rock and Roll Over. Due to a staggering amount of pre-orders, both it and its follow-up Love Gun earned platinum status even before hitting record stores. Kiss's overwhelming popularity results in their being voted the #1 band in America in the 1977 Gallup poll.
To be the #1 band voted, in the Gallup poll, where America is actually asked, is everything we hoped for. We've always considered ourselves of the people, by the people, for the people, and only made us that much more determined to live up to their expectations.
Oh my God! I can't believe I'm seeing this!
And the fans, because I think they created this world, this fantasy, really wanted anything having to do with Kiss.
Their audience is a fanatical army of young teenagers. The rock group Kiss has turned that bizarre formula into a musical, money-making machine.
Somebody came up with the idea of putting Kiss with 20th Century Fox, and that year, the 2 biggest sellers were Star Wars and Kiss.
Kiss is now a marketing conglomerate with their own Madison Avenue mogul and flogging everything from lunchboxes to dolls. Bill Aucoin is the manager. He's the money man. What does Kiss generate a year?
The total gross is about $117 million.
This is Kiss, each sold separately, and you can put them in any crazy pose you want.
That's the name, Kiss. They may look insane. Kiss, it rocks your game. It's Kiss.
Introducing Kiss Your Face Makeup. Just like the makeup worn by Gene, Paul, Peter, or Ace, Kiss Your Face Makeup has all the equipment you need. Professional makeup, brushes, and cream remover with makeup diagrams so you can look like Gene, look like Paul, look like Peter, or look like Ace. So kiss your face and get your act together.
Kiss Your Face Makeup is from Remco.
Yeah.
Nobody in that era did it like they did. I mean, you had games and costumes and dolls and a Kiss pinball machine.
You can't take it entirely seriously. There's got to be a wink involved here with what they're doing. Everybody's tried to copy them, and no one ever comes close. They were able to get away with it because it was just part of who they were.
You couldn't put a Bob Dylan doll out and a Bob Dylan jukebox and a Bob Dylan pair of boots. I mean, wouldn't go with the image, but with Kiss, why not?
I love it!
There are no rules. And the idea of selling out, we're damn straight we sell out every night we play.
I think the idea with Kiss was really like Star Trek, to go where no man's gone before.
KISS is going to have its own comic book soon, featuring the 4 strangely attired and hairy fellows to be printed by Arcata Graphics. Printed in, if you believe everything you're told, in real KISS blood. To that end, KISS flew into Buffalo today, yes, with a plane, a Brinks truck bringing a little white box, in which were, you guessed it, 4 vials of real KISS blood, which were summarily dumped into some printing ink for the old comic book. Isn't that wonderful?
And hell, when somebody comes to you and says, you want to have a comic book and you'll put your blood in the ink, you go, sounds like fun to me, nobody's done it yet.
With KISS, the more we exaggerated the characters and the more we merchandised the characters, the better it was. We might have created a monster.
Too much merchandising and not enough focus on the music for me, because, you know, I consider myself an entertainer second, a musician first.
I don't look at myself as a superhero. I know we're in comic books and we're supposed to have these great muscles, and I'm a musician. I'm a drummer. I always have been, and I always will be. That's how I look at myself.
Well, I think for KISS, what we're trying to do is, and we'll move into other areas, into feature films.
When we were asked to do KISS Meets the Phantom, it was pretty much sold to us as A Hard Day's Night meets Star Wars.
Let's go!
What it turned out to be was anything but that.
Looks like we made the wrong turn.
There doesn't appear to be any right ones.
And now on NBC Saturday Night at the Movies, KISS Meets the Phantom.
First of all, to do a movie when you have no concept of what acting is a big mistake to begin with.
Is there something wrong, Demon?
I'm not sure.
You got to be on the set at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I usually don't go to sleep till 3 or 4. And if I'm partying, you know, you wake up with a hangover, and then you gotta get in the trailer, put on makeup, and you're supposed to act.
Someone would yell our lines to us from the side, and then the camera would roll, and if we got the line out without making a mistake, that was a keeper.
So that's why those guards thought it was you. He's really got you down, Demon.
All of us.
It was a really strange time for us. The band wasn't getting along at all. We virtually weren't talking to each other.
I wasn't happy. I'm not an actor. I mean, I can, but, you know, I choose not to.
KISS Meets the Phantom was the culmination of a lot of the inner turmoil that was circulating within the band.
I mean, Ace and Peter were high-strung anyway, and rock and rollers, so, you know, that's the last thing they wanted to do was wait around in makeup all day.
This is ridiculous.
Oh, a lot of trauma started to you know, come out of the woodwork.
I would say, in all fairness to Ace and Peter, that it was not their egos talking. I believe it was chemicals and liquids doing the talking.
Time to rock and roll.
So one day I got to the set and I had a bad hangover, but I put the makeup on, crawled out of the trailer, and the director goes to me, "Oh, we're not going to need you till after lunch." And I just I got into the Mercedes and just took off.
There is a scene where Ace is actually an African American with a wig and white face. It was his stunt double.
I don't believe it! Ace, what are you waiting for? Get us out of here. Concentrate.
Peter's lines were completely redubbed by an actor because you couldn't understand what he was saying.
We don't work with a second act, Devereaux. Besides, Armageddon is a lame group.
We tried to work around the problems that we were having internally, and it was very, very difficult.
By the end of filming, Ace made it very clear that he was leaving the band, and Peter started to feel that way too.
We had taken it musically as far as I thought we could take it as a foursome, and I needed to, you know, do my own thing.
Bill Aucoin came up with the idea, well, look, don't leave the band, do a solo record. But somehow the idea stretched and said, well, let's all make a solo record at the same time.
The
group is Kiss, the label's Casablanca, and the ultimate payoff, a staggering $40 million. Pure platinum. But more than that, almost a sure thing going in, because Kiss, like a handful of other top groups, never sell less than 1 million albums.
Part of the tragedy of the initial release of the solo albums was the fact that we all expected it to be huge, and we got caught in our own trap.
Although they all sold very well, they all sold somewhere around 500,000-600,000 copies, which at that point was an enormous amount of records. Neil Bogart had the idea that he would ship 4 million. Unfortunately, that left about 1.6 million albums floating around in record stores.
Overpressing, overshipping, and then the reckoning. Tastes wavered. Retailers returned records by the millions, and record makers searched for reason.
The solo album was symptomatic of a much bigger problem. All of us were becoming lazy, unfocused, and losing sight of the dreams we had that got us to that point.
So it was the beginning of the separation, certainly.
Each one of us surrounded ourselves with people who would obviously tell us that we were the reason the band was big. We didn't need the other guys.
So there wasn't as much of that camaraderie.
Hey, you gonna do any more solo albums?
I don't know. First we got to do a Kiss album because everybody keeps wondering if we're breaking up, so we're going to show everybody and we're going to do a new album.
We started doing rehearsals and photo sessions for what would amount to, quote, the return of Kiss.
The return of Kiss. The return of Kiss. Kiss Dynasty. It's the hot new, all-new album from Casablanca, Kiss Dynasty.
Around the period of Dynasty was our first dealing with Decline.
We got a guy named Vinnie Poncia to come in and produce Dynasty to show Peter that we were willing to use his producer on his solo record. The result of it was that Vinnie Poncia decided that Peter wasn't good enough to play on the records, and we used a session drummer.
If a band isn't getting along, if everybody is fractured and fragmented in terms of what they want to do, it's got to take its toll. Things started to get a bit neutered. From being in studs and black, we were suddenly like a Vegas review.
I mean, don't forget, Casablanca was the disco label. And disco was very big at that time.
I hate disco. We gained a whole new fan base, but the hardcore heavy metal fans were really turned off by it.
Touring after doing that album was not terribly pleasurable. We were walking a fine line between being a rock and roll band and becoming family entertainment.
I'm just coming here because of their show, not because of their music.
We felt a certain responsibility to tone certain things down because there were kids there all of a sudden. We were just becoming a caricature of a successful rock and roll band.
December 16th, 1979. Despite Dynasty's multi-platinum sales, Kiss's hardcore fans grow disillusioned with both the band's descent into disco and the newer, younger fans that their comic book image has attracted. As both the Dynasty tour and the decade come to a close, Kiss begins the 80s with internal tension at an all-time high.
Like in any situation, when you're on your way up, you don't think of the down. So I don't think anyone ever thought that that would be so dramatic a fall when it happened.
It's easy to have things easy. It's easy to be on top, to have nothing but success. But the time that you find out who you're in company with is when things start to get a little tougher. Peter's departure from the band was a long time coming. It wasn't something that was a surprise. From Dynasty through Unmasked, we were using supplementary drumming on the albums. And it was just clear that things weren't working.
Peter's personal problems led to him having to leave the band. And it was heartbreaking.
Well, Peter was actually asked to leave You know, he was going through some changes in his life, and he got divorced and remarried. And Paul and Gene basically told me he's out.
We're talking today with Peter Criss, formerly a member of the group KISS. Tell me, how does it feel to be away from the group after being with such a successful group for such a long period of time?
I miss the boys, I really do, but I'm extremely happy these days. Leaving the band, I thought about it for at least 3 years now. I mean, it wasn't an overnight decision for me.
It was a sad point for us because it was the first time we had to really contend with that the original lineup was not going to go the distance. We always had this dream when we were rehearsing in New York City that we would see this through to the end together. And here was the proof that that wasn't to be. That was when we really had to reaffirm to ourselves and to each other that KISS was bigger than any member, and that it would be unfair to us as individuals and unfair to our audience to stop because one person decided that this wasn't working.
A number of drummers came in to audition for the spot that Peter Criss left. Eric Carr was in fact the last drummer that we auditioned.
This is Gene Simmons of KISS, and I'd like to introduce you to Paul Stanley of KISS, who wants to introduce you to Ace Frehley of KISS. What's the name of the new drummer?
His name is Eric Carr, and he's incredible.
He was really good. And he had a great attitude. He was very up, personable guy. We said, we like the way you play. We'll take your phone number, and you'll probably hear from us in a couple of weeks. And he asked us for autographs, and he said, yeah, sure, okay. And he walked, never thinking he was going to get a call.
Eric, how frightening is it to first of all have to audition to be the fourth member of KISS? Seriously.
Well, actually, I was really quite positive about the whole thing, and I was really excited. I just went in there, and I knew I was going to do my best, and I really relaxed. The guys were really great to me.
You see, Eric had some complexes over the fact that he was a replacement when he joined the group.
And his biggest concern when he took Peter's chair was that he hoped Peter Criss wouldn't hate him. He made it an effort to call Peter and say, look, I'm a great admirer of yours, and I'm sorry this happened. I mean, he always felt guilty about it. He was a much more accomplished drummer than Peter was, and he in fact sounded like Peter when he sang. Bigger than ever around the world. We went to Australia and played multiple days.
How you doing, Australia? You know we've been waiting a long time to come and see you, and we love you. Thank you, everybody, for a fantastic welcome.
July 1st, 1981. While the KISS phenomenon is alive and well half a world away, at home, KISS is undeniably in decline. The band enters the studio struggling to recapture their success and credibility with a new member and a new image.
We needed another album for the record label, and they weren't really writing. The only person I knew that would understand them, the personalities, and what really needed to be done was Bob Ezrin. So I asked Bob to come back.
They were at a stage in their career, the lineup had changed in the band, Peter had left.
We found ourselves in the midst of a transitional period.
And we got together and we decided that we would come up with a new idea.
Let's cut our hair, do an album that shows everybody how smart we are.
At the time, we were convinced that what KISS needed was a really classy record.
It'll be a concept album, and between us and Bob, we'll take our audience and the disbelievers to a place that they've never been before. Wrong.
Oh, listen, I thought this album was brilliant. I just thought this was, you know, a miraculous piece of work. I was abusing drugs and I was in bad shape, and I think, you know, my judgment was, to say the least, you know, impaired. But we got through the damn thing. We did. Somehow we got through it, and I had the happy task of playing it for the record company. So I took it into Polygram, and at the end of the album, at the end of the playback, You know, just this array of guys standing there like, and I'm going, what do you think? Great, huh?
Yes, Kiss has gone through a lot of changes lately, including a change in their musical style. Their latest album is a concept LP called Songs from the Elder. It's an album about modern mythology and the need for heroes.
You don't know what you're after, or if something's after you, and you don't know why you don't know you're wrong without me.
We should have been killed right then and there, you know, and that probably would have protected humankind from what we unleashed on them.
The Elder in hindsight was a good album, but it wasn't a good Kiss album. It was an album born out of us trying to appease the critics and get recognition from our peers.
The Elder probably is more a Bob Ezrin album than it is a Kiss album, and of course we got a lot of flack because the fans didn't know what to do with it.
Though we did The Elder at Ace's house, he didn't play an active role in creating the concept or the writing of the material. He didn't like the idea. He wanted the band to be more basic rock and get away from all this airy-fairy crap. And he was totally right. Totally right.
I hated that album. That was one of the reasons why. That was like the icing on the cake when I quit the group. It's like, I listened to it. I took the CD and smashed it against the wall. And I said, that's it.
Paul Stanley drove up to Ace's house and tried to convince him. He said, have your own solo career. We don't want a penny of it. Stay in the band. Don't hurt the fans. Don't hurt the band. Ace was long gone by that point.
Ace leaving was a tremendous disappointment and setback for us.
So between that and The Elder, they felt that maybe I was bringing them in the wrong direction. It was sad, but that's the way it went.
The problems of Kiss had to do with what was going on inside of Kiss, not on the outside. Bill Aucoin succumbed to the trappings of success. He got involved with lots of other bands. I personally went up to him and said, this is not going to fly. Kiss is more than a band, and we need you there.
Gene and Paul came into my office and said, look, I think basically it's time to leave. And that was pretty much it.
July 1982. With The Elder a commercial failure and the loss of 2 members and their manager in only 2 years, the pressure on Kiss to regain their focus and popularity is greater than ever.
Fans were upset. Peter Criss was no longer in the band. And then Ace left.
We were in a strange position that we didn't have a lead guitar player at the time. So we had different people coming in and trying them out. We were determined to go in the studio and do a flat-out, ballsy album, and that was Creatures of the Night.
We begged Ace to let us put his face on the cover. So even though his face appears on the cover, he never played a stick, not a note.
One of the people who came in was Vinnie Cusano. Vinnie was, by default, the person who wound up in the band. Vinnie became Vinnie Vincent, and we carried on.
2 of the band's original members are no longer with the group, drummer Peter Criss and guitarist Ace Frehley. They've been replaced by 2 new members, Eric Carr and Vinnie Vincent. But the 2 who started Kiss are still with the group. And even though their audience and some of the band members have changed over the years, Kiss is out to prove that its music, show, and mystique of their hidden identities is still the same.
That tour with Vinnie Vincent and Eric Carr, it was a disaster. Creatures of the Night was not a success. We were at our lowest point in America.
We wanted to go forward, and we were going to do it, but ultimately, you're either with me or you're going under the boot. Because I'm going forward.
July 1983. The transition from the 70s to the 80s has not been easy for Kiss, losing half their lineup in just 2 years. As their popularity continues to shrink, the band prepares to take the most dramatic step of their career.
We decided if the music's not good enough and this band isn't everything we believe it to be, then it doesn't deserve to go on.
Their concerts have only been selling at 50 to 75% capacity, and their latest album, Creatures of the Night, is the poorest-selling album of their career. Poor sales and a disappointing turnout may well be the reason Kiss called off the tour midway through and retreated to a studio to cut a new album.
People do sometimes listen with their eyes, and I think that may have been a case with Creatures.
It's time for a change, and I think Paul was pushing more than anybody else. You can't have the Fox and the Wizard. Next it's going to be Giraffe Boy and Goat Boy. It's time to prove to ourselves that this is more than makeup and bombs.
You know, for years, the trademark of Kiss was their incredible stage presentation and, of course, the fantastic stage makeup. And while audiences loved their music, the biggest question was, who was really behind the makeup? And what did the band really look like? This is a really big moment. After 10 years together, exclusively here on MTV this evening, we're going to see Kiss without their makeup for the very first time. Paul Stanley, rhythm guitarist and lead vocalist. Paul is a co-founder of the group. Vinnie Vincent, lead guitarist and co-writer of many of the songs on the current Kiss album. Eric Carr, drummer, has been with the band since 1979. And Kiss is, by the way, the very first band that Eric has ever been with. Gene Simmons, bass, also co-founder of Kiss. He is the fire-breathing, blood-spitting monster of Kiss. Welcome, you guys. This is amazing.
Hi, JJ.
Whoa. No, it's so funny because just seeing you for the very first time after all this time, I'm sure everyone in America wants to know, and especially anybody who's been a Kiss fan, and there are many of those over all these years. How does it feel now without makeup?
It feels very, very comfortable. I mean, I hope it seems that way. I feel fine about it. No, I'm fine.
The very first people we met said, you're going to wear makeup? You're crazy. It'll never work. Then when we decided to take the makeup off, you're going to take the makeup off? You're crazy. It'll never work.
When Kiss took off the makeup, I kind of thought it was a mistake. Wow, was I wrong. Without the makeup, they sold over 15 million albums.
It really was a rebirth and a resurgence for us.
You have to live for today and tomorrow, not for yesterday. That's part of our history, and we're proud of it. And for those fans who want us to go backwards, we've done that. The future is much more exciting.
We were certainly gaining steam and momentum. Unfortunately, after having had some tense and strange experiences with Vinnie Vincent that were very disappointing for us, we were moving on to another guitar player. Mark St. John joined us and worked on Animalize with us, the follow-up to Lick It Up. Mark, once we were getting ready to tour, called up and said, my hand is swollen, I can't move my fingers. He had an arthritic condition that had his hand swollen, his knee swollen. At that point, they had no idea how long it would go on for. So I called Bruce Kulick.
I wound up being asked to fill in. I didn't take it to heart that, oh, I'll be the next guitarist for Kiss, but that's actually what fate played out.
Bruce is a tremendous guitar player and made tremendous strides for the band.
We pushed ahead that whole rock pop genre that was popular then. I have to give the band a lot of credit for that era. Some of the clothing styles I didn't love, because Gene's got to look tough. And the whole glam thing is more this kind of feminine, trashy look. It was just a horrible period for Gene.
February 1991. As the band begins their third decade, they decide to return to their roots with a harder sound and image. To help with the transition, Kiss decides to once again recruit producer Bob Ezrin, despite the failure of their previous collaboration.
Gene called me and said, "You were up, you let us down, are you going to do that again?" And I said, "No, that's not going to happen. And I'd really like to work with you guys." So we got together, and we were right back to where we were in the old days. And we were just having fun, and we were smart, and we were disciplined, and we were working hard, and we were doing good things.
I remember getting a phone call from Eric saying that he wasn't feeling very well and he had to go to the doctor. He was having flu-like symptoms.
And he had some sort of, heaviness in the chest, and the doctor was checking it out. And then the next conversation being, "They found something on my heart, I don't know what it is." And I was like, oh my God.
And subsequently he called me and said, "It's cancer." And I was absolutely devastated.
We were concerned for his health. And that came first. That was more important than the making of any record. And we talked about it, and he, I think, nobly came to the conclusion that he'd best sort of step back and let the band do it with somebody else.
We told him that he needed to take care of himself and take care of his body and to heal without worrying about the band.
And then he went downhill pretty quick. And we got the word that he had died.
In more sad news, on Sunday, Kiss drummer Eric Carr died of cancer at age 41 in a New York hospital. Last May, Carr was diagnosed with a heart tumor, which ultimately spread to his lungs. His last public appearance was at the 1991 MTV Video Music Awards in September. 2 days later, Carr suffered a brain hemorrhage and had been hospitalized ever since.
Eric Carr was one of the sweetest human beings I'd ever met.
He loved the fans. He would do whatever he could to really hang out with the fans. So that was amazing.
I thought Eric Carr was one of the sweetest, gentlest, most wonderful people that I've ever met in my life. And very talented, too. But I mean, aside from that, just a really good soul.
Say rock and roll.
It was so tragic losing him, but you got to get through all that. And for myself, I always find that work gets me through some of the tough things.
When we started work on Revenge, almost immediately, Eric Singer's name came into the picture.
Because I had done the one studio track for God Gave Rock and Roll to You, they asked me to come in and start working on the Revenge album. The opportunity for me to get to play with Kiss was something I just couldn't pass up, obviously.
I was there through the ages, chased next to the cages. I have seen you eat your own. I'm the cycle of fate of 1,000-year-old reign.
The band kind of decided to get a little bit less glammy looking.
We all finally found a comfortable version of the non-makeup Kiss after, maybe looking a little silly through some of the 80s.
Many people think that the Revenge record was probably the best or one of the best non-makeup era Kiss records.
June 17, 1995. Celebrating their third decade at the forefront of hard rock, the band decides to allow their fans to get up close and personal with the first official Kiss convention. Featuring vintage costumes, memorabilia, and other pieces of the band's past, the convention also provides a revealing glimpse into the future of Kiss.
Kiss fans were starting to do very bizarre things. They started to have Kiss conventions. They had Kiss tribute bands. And I thought, well, maybe this is what they want. Maybe they want a Kiss convention.
And there was the Look-alike band, all in makeup. And you know, I started to cry. Just a spontaneous thing. I just thought, oh my God, I missed this. This was really great. This was a phenomenon that nobody else has been able to capture.
When the very first KISS convention was being put on, one of the magazine editors got a phone call from Peter Criss saying, would KISS mind if I brought my daughter down?
I said, he should come up and sing. We should get him to come up and play or sing.
It felt cool when I got up there and did Hard Luck Woman and all that stuff. It was great, man. Everybody was screaming and going crazy. And it was like the old times, man. It was a good feeling. I looked at Gene's eyes and he had that gleam I haven't seen in many years.
It was very obvious that the fans really got off on seeing Gene, Paul, and Peter together. And they seriously had to think, hey, if there's a way we can make this work, we have to at least give it a shot.
MTV had started hearing about these KISS conventions, and early on put in their dibs, would we do a KISS Unplugged at MTV?
We got some members of the family here tonight.
They invited us to come do a few songs with them and end off the night.
We're not talking about Mom and Dad.
And the fans went nuts.
We're talking about Peter Criss and Ace Frehley.
Playing with Peter and Ace again at Unplugged was historic, and it certainly opened the door to many possibilities.
This is an adventure for us. We don't know how this is going to turn out. Before I had a baby, I didn't care anyway.
We're looking at each other like, what the hell's going on? There are 6 members of KISS, and boy, this is sounding pretty damn good. It was like finding that love affair again. It just sort of clicked.
You got nothing to lose. I got nothing to lose. Oh no, you got nothing to lose. You got.
Throughout all the time's been and all the bad mouth that we've given each other.
You forget about the past. The family's back together again.
February 28, 1996. While rumors of a possible reunion gain momentum, KISS shows up uninvited to the Grammys to add even more fuel to the fire. It is the first time the original members of the band have appeared in full makeup and costumes in over 17 years.
We never had passes. It was never announced. We snuck in. Immediately they went, KISS is here, get out of the way. We were walking backstage. Nobody checked our passes. Nobody stopped us. No cops got in our way. It was like the Red Sea parting because Moses hit the rock. The question in our minds was, did the people get it? Were they ready?
Y'all down with this? We're gonna try to liven it up. You know how the Grammys used to be, all straight-looking folks with suits, everybody looking tired, no surprises. We tired of that. We need something different, something new. We need to shock the people.
Did the people want KISS in makeup with Ace, Paul, Peter, and Gene? We didn't know.
So let's shock the people. All right, Los Angeles! These my homeboys. And I see just about everything now.
We sort of looked at each other and shrugged our shoulders and said, you know what? This is probably what the fans want.
They called a meeting, and they said, hey, we're going to do a reunion tour in makeup with Ace and Peter. And I have to admit, I was shocked.
As soon as it came out of their mouth, this was what I was dealing with for all those years I was in the band, knowing at some time they'll put the makeup back on.
Both Eric and Bruce knew there was no way that we wouldn't do the reunion tour.
We kind of saw the writing on the wall that this reunion tour means that we're not in KISS anymore.
Shock me! ass up, bud. Let's kick some ass. Come on, do it.
If it were them, they would have done it. And as sad as they were and disappointed, being the people they are, which says a whole lot about them, they couldn't have been more in our corner.
It wasn't always an easy thing for me to deal with. I wasn't on the bench, actually. I was gone.
Anyone who never saw Kiss years ago will finally get a chance to see Kiss live now.
You wanted the best, you got the best. The hottest band in the world.
Last week when they asked me to introduce Kiss, I had just 2 questions. What time and what aircraft carrier?
We rented the Intrepid in New York City. We did our launch there.
We're 4 individuals who love what we do and are thrilled to be doing this together again. In the past, we've had our differences, so what? The magic is back.
2 weeks later, we put up Tiger Stadium and sold it out in 47 minutes. It was like, okay, I get it now. It's going to be monstrous.
You really like my limousine. You like the way the wheels roll. You like my 7-inch leather heels. And going to all of the shows.
The reason we came back as big as we did is because the legend loomed so large. People heard the story about once upon a time there was a band that went up on stage and destroyed the arena.
I've talked to a number of fans who are like, oh, if I could go back in time, I'd love to go back to 1976 so I could see Kiss in concert. 1996 comes around, and guess what? It's brought to your doorstep.
We went in there and did everything we were supposed to do.
And left everybody sweaty, exhausted, and jubilant.
Everybody's rocking away. Little kids, people, fathers come and they put their kids on their shoulder. They're both wearing Kiss makeup. I mean, it's an amazing thing. What fun.
Here I am influencing another whole generation of guitar players.
You wanted the best, you got the best. The hottest band in the world. That night, we were.
September 4th, 1996. With the Alive Worldwide Tour breaking attendance records from coast to coast, Kiss unleashes the bombast of their live show on a whole new generation of rock fans on MTV's Video Music Awards.
Live from under the Brooklyn Bridge, you wanted the best, you got the best. It's Kiss!
Here it is, supposedly the dinosaur rock band, no longer, appreciated at MTV. And all of a sudden, they want Kiss.
I'm sure those who grew up with Kiss knew what they were going to get. For those who'd only heard of it, they couldn't even imagine what kind of a show it was going to be. It was big, it was flashy, it was loud, and it was fun.
It is amazing to me. I mean, it's 2001. We started this in 1973.
A lot of people were saying, our past cast such a big shadow. How are we going to be able to top that?
The hottest band in the land, Kiss.
There are references to them in television shows and everywhere you go. They're a very big part of American pop culture.
They've proven that bands can be merchandise.
Psycho Circus is the music that's going to top things with the Psycho Circus tour.
And now that we got into the studio and had a chance to work together again, it's just been fantastic. And I think the album speaks for itself.
That debuted #1 around the world.
The influence that Kiss has had on showmanship.
NSYNC and all these other bands doing great technical production shows.
Giving the kids their money's worth.
Kiss broke the ground doing all of that.
Even though we've done this since about '74, in a lot of ways this is a brand new beginning for us.
You ain't seen nothing yet. It goes up from here.
it's true. Every one of us lives inside you.
March 11th, 2000. Kiss begins their farewell tour in Phoenix, Arizona. Celebrating 3 decades in the spotlight, it's a tribute to the band in all its incarnations. And for the first time, Ace and Peter join Paul and Gene in playing songs from their non-makeup period.
This tour celebrates Kiss, and on the farewell tour, we've really been playing songs from the entire history of the band.
I think it was a good run for these guys to get back together again and do, but I do think that they have to have some closure.
We always believed that we were masters of our own destiny, not fashion, not critics. Even slumping popular taste was going to determine when we were ready to get off the stage.
January 31st, 2001. On the eve of the tour stops in Australia and Japan, it is announced that due to failed contract negotiations, Peter Criss has once again left the band. Taking his place will be Eric Singer, who will be playing in the trademark Catman makeup.
Family is bizarre. Your family, my family, everybody's family. There are always fights within a family. That doesn't dilute the blood. We're still connected. Peter's every bit a part of Kiss as he ever was.
We tried to stay with the formula that we had. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with Peter. I wish it would have. You know, he's a really good guy, and unfortunately, the parties just couldn't, get it together to do.
Peter, in my opinion, listened to the wrong advice. He wanted a lot more money than we were willing to talk about. People never talk about money. It is about money. And somebody told him that we wouldn't leave without him, that everything depended on him. It's not true.
Once it became clear that we weren't going to be continuing with Peter, it was only natural that it would be Eric.
You never know what the future holds, and here I am 5 years later, and they asked me to come back and play again. This is the Kiss Farewell Tour, and it's about celebrating 30 years of Kiss, the whole band's history. I'm part of that history, but also there's 4 really strong identifiable characters that I think everybody identifies with. I think it would be an injustice to not honor that tradition of that character.
To have Eric up there in that famous makeup makes all the sense in the world to us.
Even though I played in a version of Kiss before, to be able to get to play in makeup with Kiss, to me, is like the ultimate.
Peter Criss left the band in the late 70s. Kiss continued on, prospered.
Both Ace and Peter, throughout the history of the band, have shot themselves in the foot repeatedly.
So weird. Why is that? I want to know why.
Why?
Thank God Ace at least saw the light of day and said, you know what, we should end this together.
History is oddly repeating itself, and if that's the case, Kiss continues. Even when Kiss steps off the stage from their very last show, Kiss is going to continue.
Their legacy is going to live in the attitude, in the unfettered, unapologetic celebration of just extreme everything.
It's shown that a band that, quote-unquote, had minimal talent grew within themselves and surpassed every expectation. These guys get up on stage and put out 110%.
I think that energy is something that people are always going to remember about them.
They knew basically what they wanted. They knew who they wanted to be.
Every day I wake up and it's difficult for me to blink my eyes because I don't want to miss anything.
We're 4 of the luckiest guys who ever walked the earth in 8-inch heels.
get tough. And I know life sometimes can be a drag, but people, we have been given a gift. We have been given a road, and that road's name is rock and roll.